I don't think this is really much of a question opposed to it being a fact, but yeah, the Pokemon series, even though it still gets mainstream attention, um, I feel like it's something that's been going on for quite some time. I mean, the series has been around since like the mid 90s, but the thing is, a lot of people feel like it peaked in popularity a long time ago, like sometime during the 2000s or what have you. I remember the first 3 or 4 generations of Pokemon being awesome, and, as I mentioned in another video, Pokemon Black and White 1 and 2 were both good. There were people who liked X and Y as well, which I think came out, like, 2013, 2014. But it seems like, I don't know, it seems like the franchise doesn't get as much mainstream attention as it used to. I mean, don't get me wrong, the video games like still do well in terms of sales because the Pokemon franchise is well established. It's been around for more than 2 decades, and I think recently they just had a new like adventure series appear on Netflix called Pokemon Concierge, and there's only like one season of it like thus far, and I'm not exactly sure whether or not it's going to get a season two, but kind of just looking at it, it didn't look like something to be ecstatic about. Not saying it was bad, but it wasn't. It's not the same as like the good old, Pokemon that people knew and loved and grew up to. And honestly, we learned this past year that Ash and Pikachu, it was pretty much the end of those two because they've been around the Pokemon series since day one, and obviously, the creators decided to scrap them or whatever for whatever reason. But I don't know. I feel like Pokemon, even though it still does like tremendous in terms of sales, it's just something that's not there that was once there before. Like for example, um, like Ash Ketchum, as annoying as he was, as much as a lot of people didn't like him at first, um, he was kind of like the first name that people thought of when they thought of Pokemon. Him and Pikachu, and then Misty and Brock, and the team and all the other like cast members that has appeared throughout the seasons. And I believe Pokemon's had like 25 seasons thus far. I think the video game series is I wouldn't say more popular than ever, but it's still like very popular. It's just that the anime series is something that a lot of people really don't care too much about because I don't see too many kids watching it. I don't see too many kids talking about it. Pokemon was fresh back in the day, and like when I mean back in the day, I'm talking about late '90s, early 2000s, and it's something that has influenced video game creators in relation to RPGs and action adventure like type games. And in the last video I was talking about Power World and its popularity, a game that drew like a lot of inspiration from Pokemon. And I do feel that you know, that's a game that has the potential to be like the T-rated version of Pokemon in this generation if the game ever develops into an actual series. But like you look at like some of the more recent Pokemon games that came out, like Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, which came out back in I believe it was 2022. That game has managed to sell like more than 23 million copies. And then you look at Pokemon Legends Arceus, which came out like not too long ago as well. That did over 14 million in terms of sales. But as good as those games did in terms of sales, I mean, it's still far off from the likes of Pokemon Red, Blue, and Yellow, and Pokemon Silver and Gold. That was like the golden era of like Pokemon. And you can even lump, Sapphire and Ruby and Emerald and Black and White in there as well. Those were the good old days. And I do feel like the gameplay for each like series gets better as time goes by. It's just that I don't know, the Pokemon series in general is just something that's not really talked about as much. And I think it's mainly due to the fact that the landscape of gaming has evolved and there's just more things for people to be interested in and different genres of of different video games that people are more interested in nowadays. And you look at the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series X and PC, more people are like teenagers and adults and who are into like teen slash adult slash mature games. And Pokemon's always, catered towards like casuals and children and all that stuff. And apparently the world has changed, and it doesn't seem like video game companies for the most part tend to cater to children, unless it's like Nintendo, unless they have like a franchise or a video game series that's like highly profitable. But like nowadays, people are into like M-rated games, they're into shooter games, they're into action adventure games, they're into like different franchises. Um, they're into like Marvel Spider-Man, they're into like Baldur's Gate, they're into Halo, they're into Call of Duty. Well, not so much nowadays, considering the fact that Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3 ended up being a flop, and a lot of people got laid off as a result of that. But you get the gist. It's just like more gamers nowadays are just adults who want blood, they want gore, they want violence, they want a good story. And I feel that's something that has somewhat had a detrimental effect on the popularity of Pokemon, mainly like on the video game side of things, even though the more recent Pokemon games have been like tremendous commercial success. And that's one thing I'll say about the Pokemon series. They always get like mainstream attention for the most part. I don't think it's as much of I don't think it's much of an attraction as it was years ago, because I remember Pokemon Go from 2016 was a huge deal, and I think that game drew over $1 billion in like revenue. That's how big of a deal it was, and after that, I kind of feel like for the most part, the Pokemon series is just whatever now. It still does great in terms of sales, and it still appeals to a lot of people, but I don't think it's not as intertwined in pop culture as it once was back in the late 90s or throughout most of the 2000s, which is basically the gist of what I'm trying to get like with this whole video. So, like on one hand, the Pokemon series has become stale, and a lot of people would agree that it's become stale years ago. Um, on the other hand, it still gets a ton of mainstream attention for the most part, at least on the video game side of things. Like the anime is pretty much just it's long, it feels a bit repetitive. And yeah, there are new characters and new generations of Pokemon and all that stuff. But at this point, it's like, who cares? Um, if the creators could still make money off it, they obviously should they should make more video games, and they should continue the anime series and all that stuff. But I mean, the Pokemon series has been around for more than 2 decades, and the fact that it's still doing the type of numbers that it's doing in terms of sales shows that the series is profitable, and it's to a point where I don't think they have to rely on like the older cast of characters to make a ton of revenue. So that's a pretty good thing in of itself. But on the other hand, um, Pokemon, I feel like, is eventually going to deal with more and stiffer competition from video game franchises. And as far as television is concerned, with smart TV and streaming and all that stuff, people have way more options in terms of what show they want to watch. Nowadays, opposed to having basic cable back then and being, limited in terms of what they can and cannot watch in general.